The following story contains descriptions of SA. Please proceed with caution. It's been called Nashville's worst-kept secret. For decades, allegations have circulated that Newsboys frontman Michael Tait, formerly of DC Talk, had groomed and sexually assaulted numerous victims. And after a 2.5-year investigation by the Roy's Report, which included interviewing more than 50 sources, TRR has documented Tait's alleged predatory pattern with stories dating back more than 2 decades. TRR also has corroborated allegations of Tait's alcohol and substance abuse with multiple sources. 3 men spoke to TRR, alleging that Tait befriended them individually on Christian music tours in 2004, 2010, and 2014. They were all 22 years old at the time. 2 men stated that they were drinking alcohol with Tait and later woke to him fondling their genitals. One alleged Tait also offered him cocaine while on the Newsboys tour bus. The third told TRR that Tait gave him a back massage while skinny dipping and later invited him to share his king-size bed. There, Tait allegedly, non-consensually massaged his anal region. TRR reached out repeatedly to Tait for comment with no response. From DC Talk to Newsboys. Tait's music career has been nothing short of spectacular, starting with the band DC Talk. Winning 4 Grammys before their hiatus in 2001, Tait, along with fellow Liberty University alumni Toby McKeon, Toby Mac, and Kevin Smith, Kevin Max, made history in contemporary Christian music. In their 2019 book, Jesus Freak, Will Stockton and Dee Gilson called the band nothing less than the Beatles of Christian music. DC Talk's 1995 album, Jesus Freak, spent 79 weeks on the Billboard 200 list and sold more than 3 million copies. Since the band's never-ending intermission starting in 2001, mystery has shrouded the future of the Christian music stalwarts. And despite all 3 artists collaborating on multiple songs, a Jesus Freak cruise, and a reunion on Toby Mac's latest album, Life After Death, the band never got back together, and it seems unlikely it ever will. Tait began looking toward the Newsboys, a band founded by former lead singer Pete Furler and George Perdickus in Mooloolaba, Australia in 1985. The band found success after moving to Nashville in 1991, releasing 14 studio albums and receiving 4 Grammy nominations before Furler stepped down in 2009. Tait then became the lead singer for the Newsboys, and Newsboys manager Wes Campbell became sole owner of the band. It's not an exaggeration to say that for many evangelical teens who came of age in the 90s, the Newsboys were a core part of their evangelical Christian experience, said Leah Payne, professor of American Religious History at Portland Seminary. They reformed in some ways as an ongoing supergroup, most notably recruiting Michael Tait, who was 1/3 of DC Talk. They've really had a second life that sort of gives voice to American conservatism. During Tait's time with the band, the Newsboys would score 4 #1 albums on the Billboard Christian charts, with 2011's God's Not Dead reaching gold status. The album and the subsequent lead song success led to cameos in the multi-million-dollar film series God's Not Dead. The first film alone secured $64 million internationally at the box office for PureFlix Entertainment, multiple successful Newsboys tours, and a swath of merchandise sales for the band. Although there have been rumors of misconduct, Tait and his network's influence and ability to blackball people from the industry have squelched them, sources say. The tide shifted January 15 when TikTok influencer Azariah Southworth, who famously outed journalist Jonathan Merritt in July 2012, said in a now-deleted reel that Tait is gay. Southworth did not provide evidence and went against journalistic ethics by publicly outing Tait's alleged sexuality without consent. But it was enough to disrupt the status quo in Nashville, where the heart of Christian music's power and money reside. The following day, Tait announced he was stepping down. In a statement posted on Newsboys' social media, Tait stated that stepping down from Newsboys was a shock even to myself, but amidst prayer and fasting, I have clarity that this is the right decision. The announcement came after the release of the Tait-helmed new single, How Many Times, and 2 days before their first show of the year at Poplar Bluff, Missouri. Band member Adam Agee told Fox 58 the band was scrambling to re-record the single, and a new version of the song led by Agee was released soon after. The chaos left Newsboys fans asking for ticket refunds on social media or expressing confusion at the quick turnaround of lead singers. Despite this chaos, Tait has been out of the public spotlight since his exit and has not posted on social media since his statement. There is no evidence Tait stepped back from the band due to Southworth's allegations, but the timing alone was enough to give Christian music pause and survivors impetus to speak out. Tait accused of love bombing young musician. In September 2010, 22-year-old Stephen, who asked to remain anonymous, was living the dream. TRR has a policy of not revealing the names of alleged sex abuse victims. As a touring musician for the Chris Sly Band, he walked onto festival stages every night and played guitar to crowds of screaming teenagers. Growing up in a conservative Christian family with missionary parents, this was surreal. I was a huge DC Talk fan, and Tait was just kind of like a weird idol, Stephen told TRR. As a kid, Stephen had played DC Talk's Jesus Freak on repeat, even though it was outlawed by his parents. So when the Chris Sly Band was offered a slot opening for the Newsboys, with Tait as lead singer, Stephen was in awe. But things took a turn when Tait seemed to take a special interest in him. Lead singer Chris Sly recounted to TRR the moment Tait first saw Stephen, saying he was intensely focused on the 22-year-old while their band played on stage before a Newsboys set in Columbia, Maryland on September 17th. Most of the time, big stars did not hang around and watch the opener show, Sly said. I remember sort of being peeved that Tait cared more about my bandmate than he cared about me, and then it slowly evolved into something that I felt was weird. Initially, Stephen and Tait met briefly backstage during a pre-concert prayer led by Tait. After the tour ended, Stephen worked as a clerk at a store in Brentwood, a suburb 10 miles south of Nashville. It was here he encountered his childhood idol again 2 months later, and this time Tait gave him his phone number. It started out we were friends, Stephen recalled. We went to a movie, he picked me up, and then we would usually just play darts at this bar in Nipper's Corner. Stephen wasn't fazed by the 21-year age gap between him and Tait, but Sly, who was both his bandmate and housemate, was acutely aware of it. It felt like a weird, attraction sort of thing, Sly told TRR. They were texting all the time, and they got really close really fast. It was just love bombing. Tait was pouring it on to Stephen in really interesting and kind of gross ways, looking back. He would call Stephen last minute. He would take him to steakhouses and pay for the meal and get him very expensive shots of alcohol. I had this vague memory that there was like a back room at a restaurant that he took Stephen to. That kind of stuff is really impressive to somebody who grew up as a poor missionary kid, especially with someone like Tait, who you think you're safe with. Tommy Lee, bass guitarist for the Chris Sly Band at this time, heard Stephen describe the relationship between Stephen and Tait. Stephen would go out on the road with us, and he's like, yeah, I hung out with Michael Tait, Lee said. And we're like, oh yeah, that's cool. But it was kind of weird too, you know? I didn't know anything about Michael personally. I just assumed maybe Michael was just being a nice dude, you know, trying to help him out or something. But then he was hanging out with him more, and I did think it was kind of weird at the time. By early January 2011, Tait and Stephen had become fast friends, and Stephen didn't think twice when Tait invited him to meet him at his home in Brentwood, a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom mansion sold by Tait to his former Newsboys bandmate Jeff Frankenstein later that year. Stephen presumed he and Tait would meet there before going out to a bar, but Tait invited him inside instead. Stephen told TRR they sat in the kitchen, and Tait offered Stephen a drink. He was real hush-hush, Stephen said. I later found out that he had a family living with him, and they were unaware that I was there. Stephen said Tait poured him highball glasses of Maker's Mark bourbon. He drank 3, with Tait egging him on, Stephen said. Tait also reportedly drank alcohol heavily. Then, feeling sick from the alcohol consumption, Stephen vomited over the second-story balcony. Feeling dizzy, he went downstairs and lay down in the backyard. Tait followed him. Everything was spinning, he told TRR. After a short time, Stephen and Tait went back to the second floor, and Tait led him to the living area. I was super embarrassed because this dude's like my idol at the time, and I'm super out of it, Stephen said. I'm super sleepy, so he has me get on the couch, and he was like, I'll give you a foot massage. Telling TRR this seemed kind of weird, Stephen said he then passed out. Stephen said he woke up around 4 a.m. to Tait fondling my genitals, and then he was also kissing my mouth. Saying that he went into freeze response and that he didn't know what to do, Stephen tried to pull away multiple times to stop Tait's behavior. It didn't work. I started stirring, and he kept kissing me while touching my penis, Stephen said. Eventually, I just moved my head, and he stopped. And then he just kind of froze, too. 15 years later, Stephen still remembers what time he left Tait's house because it was done in secrecy. I left before 6 a.m. This is when I figured out that he had a family living with him, Stephen said. He needed to get me out the door before the kids started waking up for school. When Stephen arrived home that morning, he told Sly that he had slept over and that Tait had given him a foot massage. He only told his girlfriend about what followed. TRR has viewed text messages between Stephen and his then-girlfriend, corroborating that they discussed the incident with Tait multiple times throughout their relationship before they broke up. 2 weeks later in the tour, Stephen told his bandmates about Tait giving him a foot massage, but refrained from sharing the rest of the details because he was embarrassed. I very much did not want to be excommunicated from Christian music, he told TRR. Severity of incident overlooked. By his own admission, Sly says he didn't realize the severity of the incident, something he now deeply regrets. When Stephen told us originally about the Tait incident, we played it off like, "Oh, you're so gay, you probably brought this on yourself," Sly recalls. Lee also remembers this conversation, but was not aware Stephen was also allegedly sexually assaulted by Tait. He was in the van with all of us, telling all of us his story, how he threw up and then Tait gave him a foot massage, Lee said. "I don't think that was incredibly odd, but I didn't do anything at the time." Like Sly, Lee also didn't realize how negatively the incident impacted Stephen. "I had told other people about this story because I thought it was so hilarious at the time," Lee said. "And I thought, well, that's kind of odd, like if you're trying to help a young Christian kid out. I just thought it was kind of a bizarre way for Tait to do it." The story about Tait's foot massage and fondling became an inside joke with the band, causing Stephen to turn inwards. But he stayed in contact with Tait, believing him to be his friend and calling him his idol. Tait was basically the top of the food chain, Stephen said. He could either help me get jobs or he could not get me jobs. I didn't want to screw myself. But he still sought answers. "The only time that I even approached the topic with Tait was about a week or two later," Stephen said. "We went to a bar in East Nashville. When we were walking in, I was like, 'Hey man, I feel like I kind of need an apology.' He was like, 'What are you talking about?' And I was like, 'What happened?' He said, 'Oh yeah, sorry about that,' and then brushed it off like it wasn't even a thought." Stephen's contact with Tait slowly dissipated, and their friendship ended when he left the Christian music industry and moved out of state. But the story of Tait's foot massage became a part of Nashville's rumor mill as his bandmates misunderstood how violated he felt. It took another 2 years before Sly realized Stephen had also been sexually assaulted. A friend of mine who's in the industry had said, "Hey, you know that Tait thing with Stephen? That happened, right?" "It happened to another friend of mine, and I think it's like a real thing. It's serious," Sly said. Sly spoke to Stephen and learned about the full details of the incident with Tait, including the non-consensual fondling of his genitals and kissing. Sly and Lee eventually apologized to Stephen, and 15 years later, with Stephen's consent, they are choosing to put their names on the record in a show of solidarity with their friend. Stephen's brother, who has chosen not to be named so Stephen can't be identified, was also told about Tait's foot massage during an international phone call in December 2010. He learned about the assault when he visited Stephen in Nashville the following spring. "We, Stephen's bandmates, made a big joke about it for a long time," his brother said. "And in this post-Me Too era, I look back and I'm like, how did I think that was a joke? Why was everybody so cowardly about this? Tait was untouchable and nobody wanted to mess with him." Stephen's brother also saw firsthand the toll the alleged sexual assault took on Stephen's life. A couple of years after that, he talked about it again, the brother said. He broke down sobbing about it because he was making like $150 a show as a musician. Michael Tait was this big star, and he thought that this guy wanted to be friends with him, and he felt betrayed. Stephen's brother later apologized for not being more sympathetic. "It kind of went from like this thing that had been a joke for years to all of a sudden it got super serious real fast," the brother said. "And at the time, I didn't expect that, but it just totally makes sense, because if that happened to me, I'd be freaking pissed." I guess you don't understand it until it happens to you or someone close to you. You can kind of be more sympathetic and less of an ass about it, I guess. Stephen told TRR that he chose to speak up about it now because there are multiple people who have had similar experiences. I would like to share it if it helps other people. I have moved on from that trauma. Skinny dipping and sleepovers. This wasn't the first time Tait allegedly groomed a young male. 6 years earlier, the rock star swapped phone numbers with a worship musician named Philip, not his real name, at a gig in the Midwest. This time, he invited the 22-year-old to stay at his house. It was spring of 2004 when Philip first encountered Tait. Growing up in the Midwest in an Assemblies of God church, he joined a moderately successful worship band right out of college. Due to this, Philip and his peers spent time on the Christian tour circuit. It was through this he met Tait, who had launched a solo career in 2001 under the band Tait. Tait and his drummer and housemate, Chad Chapin, were touring Tait's sophomore album, Lose This Life, when Tait met Philip at the band's merch booth at a show in Oklahoma. I just went up and said hi, because I was a massive DC Talk fan, obviously, given my upbringing, Philip said. Tait was just super nice. We chatted for a little while, and I brought up that I was working on my own music. He was like, "Awesome, you got anything I can hear?" And I was like, "I do. It's on my laptop in my hotel room." We did go up to my room, but he was just super supportive, listened to my songs, gave me encouragement, and then that was it. Philip and Tait traded phone numbers after this encounter, and Philip saw it as a friendship and mentoring relationship. Tait was 16 years his senior and could open a multitude of opportunities for Philip in Christian music. They texted casually over the next year, and Philip was excited when Tait invited him to Nashville for a weekend to hang out and stay at his place. This happened twice. Philip lived 8 hours away and concedes now that the invitation was a bit unusual given the distance and age gap, but thought nothing of it at the time. "I'm 22 and I had a lot of downtime when I'm not on the road. I would probably do that for like a regular friend, but a new friend that was in one of your favorite bands? Of course I'm going to go hang out," Philip said. "I did that twice, and both hangs were pretty similar. Just a bunch of bros drinking and playing darts and just being silly." Nothing caused Philip concern during his first weekend at Tait's, so his guard was down the second time he visited in the winter of 2005. He recalls there being lots of beer and cigarettes while the group spent time together at Tait's place. Philip felt in control and was sober by choice. This was a requirement in his religious upbringing and for his standing in the worship band he played for. Despite this difference, Philip was accepted and felt comfortable among Tait's friends. He recalls that late into the night during his second stay, someone suggested they go skinny dipping in Tait's spa. Philip remembers what happened next, viscerally. Everyone just starts shucking off their pants and jumping in, and I was like, "Oh wow, they're actually doing it." I'm the new guy, and I'm not very shy about that stuff, so I did it too and hopped in. But when people started leaving, Tait became more intimate with Philip. The guy started peeling off relatively soon after that, and at some point, it may have just been me and Tait left in there, Philip said, and he started giving me a back rub. This type of behavior wasn't unfamiliar to Philip or the Christian music industry. According to multiple sources who have and currently tour in Christian music, this kind of locker room behavior, often involving nudity, massage, beer, cigarettes, and in this case skinny dipping, has frequented Christian music spheres of influence for decades. Andrew Welch, a former member of the Christian rock band Disciple, described this type of behavior as horseplay, stemming from boredom and being in close quarters. He told TRR that it was a way of bonding and it didn't seem harmful at the time. While there are more reserved bands, this culture makes it normal for there to be naked bands on tour. While the Newsboys weren't classified this way, he added, Tait was known for wearing less clothes. For example, in a report from a security debrief at the Wilmar, Minnesota-based Sunshine Festival in July 2011, Security Chief Jeff Quiggle wrote, "The band's, Newsboys, manager came over to the trailer the guys were in, banged on the door, and told them that it was almost time to be on stage. Soon the trailer door swung open, and standing there, dressed only in a towel, was Michael Tait. The female security escort quickly turned her head and covered her eyes." As to the normalcy of such behavior in Christian contemporary music, CCM, Philip was naive. According to his wife, whom he was dating at the time, Philip doesn't think anyone has nefarious intentions unless he has a reason to do so. He's just like the most laid-back guy. So in 2005, when Philip was in a hot tub with Tait, he thought nothing of giving the rock star permission to massage him. Looking back, Philip recognizes this was obviously a little strange that you're not wearing any clothes and you're in a hot tub, but that it was essentially fine. I wasn't thrilled about it, but I also wasn't in that mindset of like, oh, he's hitting on me. I was just like, some guys are more touchy-feely than others, so that was that. A short time later, when everyone had left, Philip and Tait left the hot tub, dressed, and began listening to music. That's when their conversation turned. I don't even know how this comes up, but Tait was basically saying, my urethra is way bigger than normal size. Mine's like 2 or 3 times what it should be, Philip recalled. And he just whips it out and shows me, recalls Philip. Not long after, they decided to go to bed. There were no spare rooms in Tait's house, so Philip had to share a room with Tait. His host offered him a sleeping bag beside the bed, but also said he was welcome to share Tait's king-size bed. Philip thought nothing of it, something he attributes to life on the road, where it was common for him to share bunks with bandmates on tour to save money. At first, Philip said he took the sleeping bag, but then changed his mind to be comfortable. Tait made room for Philip, and they began to chit-chat as they fell asleep. That's when Tait began to give the 22-year-old another back rub, this time without consent. He starts giving me a back rub again, and at that point, I start getting nervous, Philip said. He's giving me a back rub for 3 or 4 minutes, and it just slowly getting lower. In the hot tub, he had stopped at my lower back, but he just kept getting lower until he was like actually massaging my butt cheeks. And I'm laying there like kind of frozen. It's a new friend, and you look up to him. I don't want to blow up a friendship. Without consent. Philip told TRR he was unsure what to say to Tait because he didn't want to offend Tait or make him mad. However, Philip said after 30 seconds of Tait massaging his bottom, Tait put his fingers in his anal region, and Philip spoke up. I was like, hey man, I'm not into that. That's not cool with me, Philip recalled. Philip said that Tait stopped, apologized, and turned over. He assumed that Tait was embarrassed and equated it to non-reciprocal romantic encounters with women from his own life. Considering this, he said he was not scared or afraid of Tait, and he fell asleep. When he woke up in the morning, Tait was gone, and Philip never heard from him again, despite reaching out to him multiple times over text. Philip mentioned the incident to his now wife soon after and put it down to a weird failed romantic effort that he didn't see coming. The incident with Tait has come up from time to time, she told TRR. It was probably within a couple of weeks that he told me about it. She told TRR that she and Philip had not come forward sooner because they did not want to out Tait. It's always been kind of like, okay, obviously, Tait's gay, she said. He's a huge name in CCM. I'm sure he feels like he can't come out of the closet or he's going to lose everything that he has. So he just kind of felt bad for him in the sense of, that sucks to not be able to be yourself. Philip would continue to work in the music industry, though, and recalled the incident to friends he made on tour during their long drives between gigs. It quickly became part of the slew of Tait-inspired stories that saturate the Christian tour circuit. One of these friends was a bandmate he met in 2006. The bandmate asked TRR not to name him for legal purposes, but said he recalled Philip telling him about the incident when they met on tour. He said that Tait tried to put his fingers or hands in his butt and just fondled him a little bit jokingly, under the guise of it being playful, the bandmate said. And of course, that made Philip very uncomfortable. Philip told me that he rejected this advance. Today, the bandmate sees it as more than a failed romantic attempt. This is essentially what I would consider assault, a move that was obviously unwanted and unprovoked, he told TRR. Philip has chosen to speak out now after hearing multiple stories about similar misconduct from Tait from friends and connections in the industry. At the time, I thought Tait's behavior was an anomaly, Philip told TRR. But the more time I spent in Nashville circles, the more it sounded like a pattern and that I might have actually gotten off easy in my awkward encounter. When the anecdotes I was hearing started seeming more dangerous and scary instead of just sexual or romantic, I wanted to help put a stop to this potentially happening again to others. Cocaine and benders on Newsboys tour bus. In 2014, the same pattern of grooming and assault happened again. This time, Tait's alleged victim was a 22-year-old crew member named Taylor, not his real name, and it happened on the Newsboys tour bus. Taylor entered the music industry with a passion for Jesus and production, initially hired by the New Zealand band Rapture Ruckus. He was headhunted by the Newsboys lighting director, Matt Brewer. In early 2013, Taylor became a member of the close-knit team, which already included band members Tait, Duncan Phillips, drums, Jody Davis, guitar, and Jeff Frankenstein, keyboard and music director, as well as Newsboys tour manager Steve Campbell and a variety of crew. Together, they traveled on a 12-bunk tour bus to approximately 136 tour dates a year. To get to work for a mildly bigger band right off the bat, it kind of felt really cool, Taylor told TRR. I was stoked to be working for Brewer, honestly, and the Newsboys were kind of just the medium. The band was all super nice, and some of them were quiet, but they were all really nice people, and I loved the accents. It was like, sweet, this is my new life. Taylor built rapport with the Newsboys family fast, and one of the easiest ways of doing this was by drinking alcohol. The band and crew had a hard and fast rule against letting any female stay on the bus overnight, except for Wes Campbell's daughter Grace, who occasionally performed on tour. But there was no rule against alcohol consumption. Everyone could drink. We would pretty much drink at least a little bit every day, Taylor said. There were probably a couple of days we missed, but there was pretty much always like a bottle of wine or some vodka on the bus. We always had cranberry vodka. So Taylor didn't think twice when Steve Campbell paid for everyone to have a drink and dinner at Buffalo Wild Wings after a Newsboys event on April 11. The band was celebrating the upcoming We Believe Spring tour and had finished packing the bus at 11:30 p.m. From there, the tour bus left for a gig at Kosciuszko Junior High School in Kosciuszko, Mississippi. Plans were to arrive by 7 a.m. to set up for a show at 7 p.m. the next night. Slowly, everyone peeled off to their bunks, leaving Tait and Taylor in the front with the bus driver. This was not unusual, Taylor told TRR. They, along with Brewer, Phillips, and any crew members who smoked, would often stay up late at the front of the bus, drinking and laughing. Sometimes, Tait would give Taylor an unsolicited arm rub. But Taylor didn't think much of it. In my family, we all grew up giving each other massages, he said, so I thought he was being a nice guy. By the time the bus arrived at their next destination, they were the only ones still awake, and they were both heavily intoxicated. Taylor realized it was nearly 6 a.m., and he had to be awake in 1 hour to unload. I was like, dang, I messed up. I'm pretty hammered. Then I went to the back of the bus to sleep, Taylor told TRR. Taylor headed to his makeshift bed. As the least senior member of the crew, he was relegated to this position whenever Grace or an additional merch person was on board. But this time, Tait followed him, presumably to pick up his jacket. I went to the back and Tait came with me and was like, hey, want to try something? Taylor recalled. He said Tait then opened some foil with cocaine in it. Taylor declined and is unsure if Tait used some or not. Taylor then went to bed and quickly fell asleep. He woke up a couple of minutes later to a shocking discovery. I woke up but didn't fully open my eyes, and I just realized that Tait was rubbing my penis through my pants on top of my jeans, Taylor said. Like every other survivor TRR spoke with, Taylor said he froze when he realized what Tait was doing. I was like, oh my gosh, this is actually happening, damn. And I just felt bad for him in that moment. I thought, this guy's pretty effed up. Taylor told TRR that while Tait was assaulting him, he moved his body slightly to make Tait think he was waking up and would leave. He did. I thought, wow, that's crazy, but I was still tired and I knew I was still going to load in the morning no matter what, Taylor said. So I decided I'm going to go to bed. Looking back, I realized that was sexual assault. In retrospect, Taylor says his choice to fall back asleep immediately was due to his alcohol consumption. He only started processing what happened properly a few hours later when he called his now wife. Taylor had called me and he was already in the back of the bus and just told me, hey, I don't know how else to say this, but this just happened. We've been up late. We're all just drinking, Taylor's wife told TRR. Then he told me, Tait offered me drugs. I'm pretty sure it was cocaine at the time. And he was like, absolutely not. I don't want to do that. His wife, who was also involved in Christian music and touring with another major artist, said Taylor then went into detail about being groped by Tait. He said, I was asleep, and the next thing, I wake up and he's just rubbing my penis with clothes on, she remembers. Then he just got up and left, and nothing was made of it. Taylor's wife was no stranger to the underbelly of the Christian music industry. She had joined around the same time as Taylor, and the two were saving up to get married. She told TRR, the Christian industry kind of shocked both of us a little bit with a double standard, but we kind of got over that kind of quickly. However, neither of them expected sexual assault. She continued, "I asked him how he felt, and Taylor said, 'He's just a very broken man.' That's his immediate response. We were young, and it was like, 'Do you say something? Do you not say something?' And I felt that it wasn't my story to tell." Ultimately, Taylor made the decision to forgive Tait and not report the incident to Steve Campbell or Matt Brewer. He decided never to go drinking that heavily with Tait again. He told TRR that Tait's physical contact towards him seemed to lessen after that incident, and he no longer massaged him or gave him bear hugs. Taylor said he and his wife decided to come forward now, 11 years later, in solidarity with an alleged sexual assault survivor whose story TRR will be reporting soon. Both Taylor and his wife have left the Christian music industry and say that telling their story brings back tough memories. It honestly was a big shock because I think we felt like we were grieving in a way for a couple of days after you had called about the story, Taylor's wife told TRR. Taylor and I very much love the Lord, and I personally believe that whenever the Lord wants to expose it and God is ready to shine a light, He will, Taylor's wife said. And so I'm just like, okay, Lord, if this is what we need to do, we know we need to share this part of what we know, then I believe God will protect us. TRR approached the Newsboys for comment about the allegations towards Tait. The band responded via a statement through Nashville attorney Samuel D. Lipshe of Bradley Errant Bolt Cummings. While we are aware of unsubstantiated aspersion cast via internet towards Mr. Tait and Newsboys by one particular individual, because your questions revolve around the alleged behavior and actions of Mr. Tait, it would be inappropriate for Newsboys to speculate or comment, it read. If what you allege can be supported with evidence, we would imagine Mr. Tait and his representatives will have something to say about the matter. Thanks so much for listening to The Roys Report, a podcast dedicated to reporting the truth and restoring the church. I'm Julie Roys. And just a reminder that The Roys Report is listener supported. That means we can't do anything that we do without faithful supporters like you. So if you believe in our mission of exposing abuse and corruption, standing up for victims, and holding Christian leaders accountable, would you please help us out with a gift this month? To give, just go to julieroys.com/donate. That's julieroys.com/donate. Also, make sure you subscribe to The Roys Report on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. That way, you'll never miss an episode. And while you're at it, I'd really appreciate it if you'd help us spread the word about the podcast by leaving a review. And then, please share the podcast on social media so more people can hear about this great content. Again, thanks so much for joining me today, and God bless.